Lightsaber crystals choose their wielder, from Elam's frozen caverns to Sith forges, and every color tells a story of bond, corruption, or purpose. Let's break this down. Kyber Origin. The Kyber begins as a glassy, colorless seed hidden in caverns and temple vaults. When a force sensitive approaches, it hums, a subsonic vibration that rises over roughly 12 to 18 seconds until the crystal answers. Describe Elam's ice caverns, light fractures into 1,000 thin beams, breath fogging, and the crystal's first note like a tuning fork struck underwater. Mechanically, attunement is a resonance lock. The wielder's bioelectrical rhythm and the crystal's lattice align, stabilizing a blade frequency that can be measured as a narrowband peak in the 1 to 3 kHz range. Novices feel a warmth in the palm. Veterans report a pressure behind the eyes. The origin story sets rules. Color is emergent, not painted. Location and history bias outcomes because ambient force currents seed tonal tendencies. Visual beats, a hand hovering, a diagnostic readout showing a resonance spike, a blade blooming from silence. Tension comes from refusal. Some crystals remain mute, forcing a choice. Leave it buried or break it and risk shattering the bond. Strategic note. Natural Kybers favor unpredictability and symbiosis. Their weakness is dependence on the wielder's emotional stability. Microscene. A young acolyte waits 12 seconds that feel like a lifetime as the crystal's hum climbs, then collapses into a single clear note, the first promise of a blade. Red synthetic. Synthetic crystals are manufactured, metallic, and designed to obey. Their creation smells of ozone and molten alloy, and the lab's air tastes faintly of copper. Picture a Sith forge. Sparks. A crucible at precise 1,200 to 1,400 degrees Celsius, and technicians pouring a molten matrix into a seated lattice while a pulse generator pings at 4 to 6 kHz to anneal structure. The result is a blade with a rasping edge and a higher harmonic content, visually more jagged, audibly a harsher overtone, that reads as aggression on screen. The appeal is control. Synthetics deliver predictable pitch, consistent output, and can be tuned for blade length and stability. They do not choose, and therefore do not betray. Contrast this with Kyber growth, where Kyber sing, synthetics scream. Tension arises when a wielder sacrifices connection for certainty. The blade grants power but severs a potential for empathy. So strategic note, synthetic crystals are excellent for engineered soldiers and ritual dominance, but are brittle to metaphysical resonance. They cannot be purified and often fail under extreme force feedback. Microscene. A Sith Lord grips a newly forged hilt, the generators hum steady at 5 kHz, and the blade ignites with a sound like metal tearing. The wielder smiles because nothing in the crystal can refuse them. Darksaber Black. The Darksaber is an ancient, flat-bladed relic that tastes like history and politics. Its black core absorbs light, and its single-edge profile cuts with a different waveform than round blades. Imagine Mandalore's halls, banners, the scrape of armor, and a blade that sings low and taut, its fundamental frequency lower and more percussive than a standard Kyber saber. Origin stories matter. Tare Vizsla's smithing left a signature resonance that binds to leadership and claim. Ownership carries ceremonial weight and social consequence. The Darksaber's sound design is unique. A metallic thrum under a thin, bright edge, and its combat style favors short, decisive strikes and wrestling for possession. Tension is political. To hold the Darksaber is to stake a claim, and duels over it are as much about legitimacy as survival. Strategic note, the Darksaber is a symbol that can rally or fracture. Its weakness is that its power is social as much as physical. A blade without a people is a relic. Microscene. A claimant lifts the Darksaber, the room hushes as the blade's low note vibrates through armor, and a crowd exhales like a single organism deciding a fate. Corrupted bleeding. Bleeding is violence made visible, a Kyber forced to bleed red through hatred, pressure, or ritual. The process is slow and chemical, like ink spreading through crystal. Visualize a dark chamber, hands pressed to a stone, and a wielder pouring emotion into the lattice until the crystal's clear light clouds, and a crimson vein crawls through it. Mechanically, bleeding alters the crystal's lattice defects, and introduces stress fractures that shift emission spectra toward the red. The blade's harmonic profile becomes ragged with a low, throbbing undertone. The moral cost is explicit. The wielder must feed the crystal with pain or malice, and each use deepens the stain. Contrast: where purification returns clarity, bleeding is permanent without extreme intervention. Tension is ethical and visceral. Power at the price of self. Strategic note: blood crystals grant raw, aggressive output and can destabilize opponents psychologically, but they tether the wielder to a corrosive path and are vulnerable to purification rituals and social ostracism. Micro scene: a hand squeezes a crystal until it darkens, the room smelling faintly of iron. When the blade ignites, it sounds like a throat clearing and the wielder laughs, but their eyes have a new, hungry sheen, white purified. Purification is a reclamation. A blood crystal cleansed until it reads bone white, a silence after a storm. Picture a quiet chamber, incense burned away, and a wielder sitting in stillness while the crystal's hum narrows and then flattens. The color drains until only a pure, clinical white remains. Technically, purification realigns lattice defects and removes stress impurities, restoring a narrow, stable emission band and reducing harmonic noise. The blade's pitch becomes clearer and quieter, often dropping in overtone content by measurable decibels. Symbolically, white signals neutrality and refusal of dogma. The wielder rejects both Sith domination and Jedi orthodoxy. Tension comes from identity. Purification severs a crystal's violent history, but leaves scars in memory. Strategic note: purified crystals are stealthy and morally ambiguous tools. They are less prone to emotional feedback, but can be mistrusted by both camps. Micro scene: a former acolyte breathes slowly as the crystal's red veins fade. When the white blade blooms, it is almost soundless, and the room feels like the moment after a storm when birds begin to call again. Yellow temple guard. Yellow is a sentinel's bell, precise, disciplined, and rare, associated with temple sentries and specialized emitters. Envision temple corridors lit by slow measured footsteps and a blade that emits a crisp, staccato note. Its waveform emphasizes attack clarity over sustain. Construction differences matter. Many yellow blades use focused lensing or dual-phase emitters that tighten the beam and produce a sharper, transient, ideal for defensive work and a non-lethal interdiction. The color reads as institutional. Guardians, who patrol archives and checkpoints, favor measured strikes and ritualized forms. Tension arises from duty. Yellow wielders are less showy but more reliable under pressure. Strategic note: yellow crystals excel at control and crowd management. Their weakness is reduced raw cutting power compared to blade or synthetic blades, and they rely on discipline rather than improvisation. It's micro scene. A temple guard steps into a corridor, the yellow blade's staccato hum snapping like a metronome. A would-be thief freezes, not from fear, but from the inevitability of the guard's measured approach. Purple signature. Purple is theatrical and rare, a violet flare that split choreography and canon, and it reads as both personal and performative. The purple blade's visual signature is a saturated violet with a bright core and a warm halo. Acoustically, it carries both the clarity of blue and the depth of red, producing a complex harmonic mix that stands out in a duel. Debate surrounds its origin: a rare Kyber hue, a unique crystal impurity, or a deliberate cinematic filter. Present both possibilities: a genuine rare Kyber that forms under unusual attunement conditions, or a crafted effect chosen to mark a wielder's individuality. Tension is identity and spectacle. Purple blades force audiences to ask why. Strategic note: purple is psychologically disruptive and marks a wielder as exceptional. Its weakness is that rarity invites scrutiny and makes the wielder a target. Micro scene: a purple blade arcs through smoke and the light paints the wielder's face in bruised lavender. Opponents hesitate because the color feels like a question they cannot answer. Orange rare. Orange sits between fire and dusk, warm, aggressive, and increasingly visible in modern media and games. The orange blade's glow is amber rich with a slightly flickering edge, and its harmonic profile emphasizes mid-range grit that reads as impatience. Historically rare, though orange appears where Kyber growth occurs in mineral-rich strata or where hybridization with exotic elements shifts emission toward amber wavelengths. On screen, orange reads as youthful defiance or frontier pragmatism. Tension comes from scarcity. Orange wielders are uncommon and often self-taught, improvising techniques that exploit the blade's quick, biting strikes. Strategic note: orange crystals are versatile and psychologically striking. Their weakness is that rarity can mean less predictable resonance under extreme force feedback. Micro scene: an orange blade snaps to life in a cantina brawl, its amber light throwing quick shadows. The wielder moves like someone who learned to fight with whatever they could find. Green Jedi. Green is the forest's reply. Calm, resonant, and tied to consular traditions of diplomacy and attunement. The green blade's hum is broad and warm, with a steady sustain that favors measured, flowing forms. Its waveform shows a strong fundamental and fewer high harmonics, producing a sound like wind through leaves. Famous wielders use green for patient defense and precise economy of motion strikes. Contrast green with blue. Green leans toward perception and mediation, blue toward direct engagement. Tension arises from philosophy. Green wielders must choose when to act and when to listen. Strategic note: green crystals excel at sustained engagements and force-aided sensing. Their weakness is that they can be outpaced by raw aggression or engineered disruptions. Micro scene: a green blade opens in a swamp at dawn, its sound blending with frogs and dripping water. The wielder waits, and when they move, it is with the inevitability of a tide. Odd blue iconic. Blue is the archetype: bright, guardian-focused, and culturally dominant, the baseline against which others are measured. The blue blade's note is sharp and clear, with a bright overtone that cuts through ambient noise. Its waveform emphasizes attack transience and quick recovery, making it ideal for guardians who train for reflex and defense. Blue's ubiquity makes it a visual shorthand for heroism, but that familiarity hides nuance. Blue blades vary in pitch, length, and emitter tuning, and small differences change combat rhythm. Close the piece by ranking blue as the cultural baseline while reminding viewers every crystal reflects a choice: connection, control, purity, or politics, not just a color. Strategic note: blue crystals are versatile and reliable. Their weakness is that ubiquity breeds predictability. Micro scene: a blue blade cleaves through smoke and the camera lingers on the clean, bright line. The wielder's stance is simple, practiced, and unmistakably ready.